Okay, if my hair looks crazy today, it's because ever since I saw this film in cinemas yesterday evening, I have been tearing it out. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. My name is Mickey Joe, and I'm obsessed with all things theatre. Here's what you need to know about me. I am a lifelong theatre fan, a pundit here on social media, and a professional international theatre critic. Which is why I went to go and see the brand new film adaptation of Mean Girls yesterday in cinemas, because, spoiler alert, this is actually not just a film remake of the 2004 film, this is actually a film adaptation of the musical version of that film. It's a movie of the musical of the movie. If that sounds convoluted, it's not the first time that's happened. See Hairspray or The Producers. We'll come back to those later. But as a little disclaimer up front, because you will have already seen the title and the thumbnail of this video, and maybe you're upset with me because of those, I want to explain. Because I have seen the bad faith trolling of this film on social media. I have also seen the content creators imploring people to be kind and support the work that has been done by individuals, and while recognizing all of that and both sides of this, I really wanted to be able to come on here and say no, I want to defend this film, kind of like I did with Disney's Wish. I enjoyed that film, and say that as a musical theatre fan, I got what they were trying to do here. I enjoyed this, it was good. Unfortunately, I cannot say any of that with conviction, no matter how much I may want to, because I really didn't enjoy this film. But rather than just trolling it in bad faith and saying, oh, why are they singing? I am going to break down for you a comprehensive list of detailed reasons as to why I don't think this was a successful adaptation of the musical of the movie, while also addressing the unique challenges I think it had to traverse along the way. So buckle up, we are going to talk about everything I thought was wrong personally with Mean Girls open brackets 2024 close brackets. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more theatre themed content here on my channel, including other reviews about shows that I love and occasionally things that I hate, make sure to subscribe. You can also find me on other social media platforms. I am on Instagram, I am on X, I am on TikTok, I am on Facebook, because I am an old person. I am wearing so much eye cream right now. Finally, before we get into today's video, I want to hear from you, the people. Comment down below with what you thought of the Mean Girls movie. Especially if you loved it, let me know why you enjoyed this film. And stay tuned to find out why I didn't. Okay, having said all of that, I'm going to open with things that I liked. We're going to do like a negativity sandwich, except without the bottom layer of positive bread. I thought it was very effectively and very believably updated to the 2020s from the early 2000s. I enjoyed all of the costuming. I loved the costuming. I know that that's had some heat and some people haven't liked the way that the plastics were costumed. I think between them having different looks, the way Regina is dressed, the car she's driving, and the vibes, the tones of the performances, what the plastics would be like now. Little changes to the script, the attitude of Regina's mother. I thought it felt much more like a 2020s version of Mean Girls, and I know for sure that this is definitely going to appeal more to high school aged viewers than me, and that's what the film is for. So for as much as I'm going to tell you it failed in its outcomes and it wasn't successful as a film adaptation, if it's making those audiences happy, then maybe it is. I also liked the creativity in terms of the musical staging. I have many thoughts about the way they delivered these musical numbers and the way that they were directed, but they do some really fun and creative things. The moment where Janice like runs into the gym and is like descending down on a weights machine on like a resistance pulley thing. I do go to the gym, I don't know what that's called even when I'm there. When Regina is doing her first "My name is Regina George" bit, and she's walking down a line of people who are just like staring at her open mouth, and she's raising up their chins, and then on the last one she pushes up a little sippy carton. Like the creativity in thinking what could we do in these musical numbers, and the cleverness and the wit, which is something I always enjoy, I think was absolutely there. That was not my issue. I also want to talk about the LGBTQ+ inclusivity, because we always had Damien, an out gay character in the first film, but in this one, Janice is also a queer character, and this gets nodded at in the first film, but by the end she is not canonically at least a lesbian. And I really like that one component of updating this to the 2020s is that the high school experience for those queer students gets to be a little bit different. They get to bring same-sex dates to the prom. That was a beautiful thing to see in a major motion picture, especially while LGBT audiences are offered crumbs in terms of representation in many other major motion pictures. But I digress. Tomorrow on my channel I am going to be posting my reaction to the soundtrack, where I will talk about how much I enjoy the vocal performances of Auliʻi, Jaquel Jaquel and Reneé, as Janice, Damien and Regina. I think they are all fantastic. We're going to talk much more about the performances and the vocals in this video, but I thought they did a great job. So that was what I enjoyed. Let's move on to what I think was wrong with the film. So we're going to start with some big picture stuff, and we're going to talk about how they made the songs happen, how they chose to bring about these musical numbers, because this is the biggest issue that any film has to traverse. Something about being on stage and bursting into song is a lot easier to do than it is on screen, or at least I think that's what directors have convinced themselves. Because what we've seen in the last 20 years with movie musicals is that they have to choose one of a few different routes. You can either have every musical number be an elaborate fantasy dream sequence, kind of like what Chicago does. Roxy Hart is staring into the prison and then suddenly it comes to life in a dream in her mind and the whole thing is a fantasy, or you can have everything literally be happening, kind of like in Hairspray, although Hairspray it's a little different because many of the performances are happening because they are people actually singing and they're musical performances on a dancing TV show. Mean Girls, I would argue, never actually makes that choice. Because at the beginning we get this abstract introduction from Janice and Damien as narrators. They are performing in their garage, and then the garage door opens, and then we are in Africa where we see Cady, and she is singing a wistful song about what she would like her life to be. They cut It Roars from the Broadway version of the show, and they've written her something more contemporary pop TikTok sounding. That generally is the quality of a lot of the changes of the score from the show to the film, but we'll talk about that more in the next section. And we see her singing to herself, but this is a dream sequence kind of a number, and the reason we know this is because halfway through we get transported to North Shore High School, where her song is interrupted by someone knocking into her. That takes her out of the fantasy, and she then sees life as it really is. It's not all singing or dancing, they're not twirling around her and singing along, it's a lot more real. A similar thing happens during the song Stupid with Love, when the classmates who were singing her backing vocals and pushing her on a swing are suddenly giving her a weird look for like staring into the middle distance, and maybe even singing to herself. I can't remember what it is that they're reacting to, but again, it's another snap back to reality moment. When we first meet Regina George, all of the lights in the cafeteria shut off, and we kind of see that Cady is imagining the performance that Regina gives, then singing her introduction of herself in a bit of a dream sequence. That's not really happening with Reneé going, "My name is Regina George." What really happens afterwards is that she snaps out of it by Regina saying, "Hey, come over here." And this would work if that was going to be consistent throughout the film, if it was going to be that every musical number happens because it's a dream sequence and it's the way that Cady is interpreting it. She experiences the world of that high school through this musicalized lens, except for the fact that this isn't going to work from the off because she isn't present in every single song. Take something like Karen's song, Sexy. This is reconceived as her filming a TikTok, which is clever enough because there's a joke at the start of the song where she says something, then she says, "Wait, let me start over," so she can literally start filming the TikTok again. And we transition from that to her then performing it at the Halloween party, where it's just people singing in real life. This is not because Cady's imagining it, this is just happening. Similarly, when Reneé as Regina is singing World Burn, there is no one around her to be imagining this situation, she's just singing angrily in the hallways. Ergo, there's no real meaning behind the musicalization of the film, but you start to get this sense that the film is embarrassed of its songs. Like, it keeps the fun poppy ones, but it removes the more sentimental ones that move the plot forwards, like More Is Better, the song between Cady and Aaron during her party towards the end of the film. It also breaks the fourth wall. It has band members talking about playing along to different songs during the show, with only Tina Fey acknowledging this and saying don't worry about it. Tina Fey playing Miss Norbury in the film, but also being, you know, the whole writer, producer, all that stuff. I just think that this is a film that gives us as an audience the sense it is not comfortable with its musical numbers and is doomed to fail because of that. Next up, let's talk about the actual songs themselves. So this has been thoroughly talked about on social media, that they sound very different to the Broadway cast recording, and that's to be expected. We are achieving a different thing here, and I talked about this positively in Matilda. Lashana Lynch's performance of My House is very different to the stage performance of My House. You don't need this big, belty thing on screen. You can do something smaller and more sincere because we're getting the emotion in a more extreme sense. We're getting this massive visual close-up. The same thing with Les Mis. It doesn't need to be belted out and sound pristine. It should sound more raw and authentic. With Mean Girls, they evidently want everything to sound less Broadway and to sound more contemporary pop TikTok-y. You hear that very much in the song Sexy that Karen sings, and I think it works well in that instance. Where I have an issue is something like Revenge Party, where the song retains the same feel as the Broadway version, just with a much thinner orchestration, with less vocal support in the backing vocals, and it just sounds diminished. I also think there is not enough support in the orchestrations on Regina's song. Reneé Rapp sounds phenomenal, but on both Someone Gets Hurt and World Burn, you just want more emphasis beneath her. Also in Janice's song, in I'd Rather Be Me. Some of the most egregious changes from the show to the film are Cady's songs. Now there is a reason for this, because in the musical, in Stupid with Love and It Roars, the orchestration underneath and the feel of the song is deliberately inspired by African music, or at least the Western perception of African music. It's very Lion King-esque. So It Roars has been completely rewritten and replaced with a different song, which I do not enjoy as much. Meanwhile, Stupid with Love has been reorchestrated so that it sounds like a contemporary pop song. I actually don't hate this. I think it's quite cute, and they've pulled off something very challenging in trying to like Frankenstein this song into something completely different than what it was written to be. What I don't love is the section towards the end where she very earnestly sings about being filled with calculus. That's only a joke. I think it's a great lyric, but it's only a joke that lands when she's hyper and giddy and saying it really fast and doesn't care that she sounds stupid because she's in love and she's got a crush on a boy. When it slows down for her to say that and then do the line about him being sweaty at the gym, it's just cringe-inducingly bad. Which brings us to Cady. Cady is the most important character in this film. It's through her that we experience the high school. She's this homeschooled student from Africa, moving to America with her mother. She doesn't have a dad in this film. For some reason, this and Dear Evan Hansen, every time we take Broadway musicals to the screen, suddenly the dad either becomes a stepdad or is gone completely. I don't know what difference this really makes to anything. It's not like Cady couldn't have the same relationship with her mother that she has if she were also to have a dad, like in the original film. I don't really know why that change was made. Is that how it is on stage? Maybe that's how it is on stage, just because of the number of actors, but then that wouldn't be an issue for the film. I don't know. The problem is that in this version versus the original, Cady lacks a voice, and she goes through a significant arc of development in this narrative. In the original film, Lindsay Lohan was playing Cady, and she had this inner monologue that we heard as voiceover. When she said to the plastics, "Oh, that's Damien, he's almost too gay to function," we heard her reflect on that and saying, oh, maybe that was only okay when Janice said it. The whole October 3rd thing comes from voiceover. When she's becoming popular and she's obsessed with talking about Regina, she reflects that she could hear people getting bored of her, but she didn't know how to stop. There are a lot of important character development moments that we hear in that voiceover. That does not happen in this film. What we have instead, or what we ought to have instead, is her singing her feelings in musical numbers, except many of Cady's lyrics have been taken away from her. We'll talk about why I suspect this is in the next section, but one of the most egregious happens in the song Apex Predator. Now, Auliʻi Cravalho and Jaquel Spivey sound fantastic on this song as Janice and Damien, but the second verse used to belong to Cady. She would sing, "At the watering hole, see the girls who weren't nice, have to scatter like mice from a jungle cat." She's reflecting on the fact that the other students who are lower in the popularity food chain, who weren't nice to her on her first day when she arrived, are also intimidated by Regina that they have to run away. This is a big part of what convinces her to remain in Regina's orbit and be among the plastics. She then sings, "And though Janice is great, she does not have this power. People literally cower. Janice can't do that." She is weighing the two friends that she has made on her first day, and she's like, I like Janice. Janice seems really nice. I've been told to be wary of Regina, but she's observing the power that Regina has. She's doing all of this through the lens of someone who has grown up around African wildlife, and that's what the whole point of the song Apex Predator is. She's seeing it through that lens, like Lindsay Lohan did in the original film when she said, oh, it's just like a jungle and a food chain. But unfortunately, Cady doesn't sing any of that in this new film. She sang it on the Broadway stage, but Jaquel Spivey as Damien sings that. While he's standing next to Janice, he's saying, though Janice is great, she does not have this power. That's far too self-aware, and that's really an observation for Cady to be making, not for Damien to be saying about his friend. That's weird and it diminishes our understanding of Cady's thought process in that moment. What we're left with is Cady just wide-eyed going, oh, okay, I guess I'll go to Regina's house, and that's as much as we know. There's some really valuable lines in the song More Is Better that we don't get really in the dialogue that has replaced it. The second verse of I See Stars, God, I wanted to tear my hair out when this happened. She sings the first verse of I See Stars when she is voted homecoming queen, and she gets the crown and she snaps it. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen this film, my goodness. But again, the second verse of that song is important in the stage show when she's reflecting on her behaviour and taking responsibility, and she's saying, I went low, not high, that was my problem, don't be frightened like me, and then telling everyone that they're stars, whatever. In the film, she walks off stage and the band sing that instead in the background with the volume way down while she goes and talks to Janice. Too much of Cady's material is taken away from her, and for what? So we can have more little cutaway sections to TikTok jokes that don't really land? Now I want to talk about Angourie Rice, because I think she is a charming performer who is sadly out of her depth with this role. And unfortunately, I think hers is the only performance I really didn't find a way to enjoy in the film. I had mixed feelings about Christopher Briney as Aaron Samuels, but he's not really as important, and he doesn't even sing in this one because they've taken away his musical moments. Angourie, as a vocalist, is not strong enough to sing this material. She gets away with it in the first song and in Stupid with Love because she has this very thin and sweet enough sounding pop voice. She can carry a tune, but she does not have the requisite power behind it to deliver Katie's section in Revenge Party. That fell disappointingly flat and was literally flat. And I suspect is also the reason why her verse is not sung by her in Apex Predator. In her performance of I See Stars, it just also doesn't sound bright and buoyant enough. The whole thing feels disappointingly heavy, and again, it falls flat. I also, though the costuming team have done a great job in trying to gradually show her transition into the new Regina after she takes down Regina George, don't really buy into the gradual shift here. We see her really pivoting from just this wide-eyed, earnest, naive Cady at the beginning to suddenly snapping into being a mean girl. I wish the transformation of her character was more gradual, because she's only ever just like singular facial expression, wide-eyed, and then suddenly like conniving. And I also think that Cady circa the first film is trying to act like Regina because that's what she thinks Aaron Samuels wants. That's her driving force. That is Cady's motivation, as disappointing as it is in a feminist film. She just wants Aaron to like her, so she tries to be like Regina. In this one, it doesn't feel like she's acting like Regina. It feels like she becomes Regina and is oblivious to the fact that that's not actually what he wants. She has a similar issue in the first film, but it feels like she's really her beneath all of that. And in this one, that gets lost. But then she isn't the only one to blame, because this school is awful. So I've worked in education, and maybe the attitudes of students have changed in the 20 years, yes, 20 years since the first film came out, but all of the people at this school are just awful. The student body is completely irredeemable. Everyone is mean to Cady, which is something that we've seen before in the film and the musical. They all whip out their phones and take photos and videos whenever there's the opportunity to make fun of someone or bask in someone's embarrassment. But normally we have these moments where they get redeemed and we find out about the individuals. What's gone from the homecoming crown scene is Cady name-checking different girls and saying you and calling them by name. Your hair looks really pretty, that must have taken you ages, that dress looks beautiful on you, you all look amazing. And you see their faces light up. She still like throws them bits of crown, but it's not quite as special because she doesn't say their names. Instead we get a generic song, I See Stars, You're All Stars, which it doesn't hit in the same way. But I would argue they don't deserve to get name-checked at the homecoming dance because they've had no redemption. They've just only all been awful. The moments where they're redeemed in the musical, the song Fearless, when Regina is first dethroned by Cady, we have them all singing about the freedom they feel now that Regina is gone. And they talk about being able to express themselves without fear of like bullying, basically. That is cut from this film. It's the end of Act 1 number, and we see this happen often because the film has a different structure. It doesn't have an interval or an intermission like the Broadway show does, so they don't need something that's going to build us up to a high while we then go away and go to the bathroom and go and get drinks and ice cream. But it does mean that we lose the sense of all of the other characters at this school as individuals with souls and with feelings. They just become this generic, faceless, nameless crowd of iPhone-wielding robots. They also don't chant with Janice during I'd Rather Be Me, rather than that becoming a speech that she makes in situ and the student body eventually being like, you know what, yeah, she's got a great point. Janice, It's what happens in the first film. She does a big speech and then she falls backwards into the crowd and they all cheer. In the stage show, they go, Janice, 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 in the middle of the song. That vocal line is literally cut. Instead, she is running around the school, making a great point that should rally all of the students behind her, but instead, they're still pushing her away, which does nothing to explain the fact that they do then echo I'd rather be me as an ensemble vocal at the end of the song, because the whole meaning of it has been changed. I have no idea why that is. So you don't deserve to get name checked at the prom, Glen Coco. Is Glen Coco a girl? Is Glen Coco a boy? I'm just questioning this now for the first time. Weirdly, you know who does get all of their insecurities shown? The Plastics. So there's a little bit of this in the first film, especially with Karen and Gretchen, but the only people whose insecurities get explored, I would say, in this film is the Plastics themselves. And I actually do like what happens with Regina's character here, how like her issues around food and body image are foreshadowed when she is asking about the calories in the yogurt and then just goes to get cheese fries instead. And I think there's a little more depth to the way that that is portrayed in this film versus the original, but it makes them feel like the only ones who are really human beings. I think Auliʻi's Janice is so strong and defiant and indifferent. She's clearly upset when Cady doesn't go to her art gallery situation. We don't really see Jaquel's insecurities around anything. Cady gets this textbook early insecurity moment when like there's nowhere for her to eat lunch, but after that happens, it's the Plastics who are the only ones who are allowed to have feelings in this film. We see Gretchen being tortured, we see Karen second guessing that her bra is showing under her sexy Santa outfit, and we see so many shots of Regina like at war with herself over the things that are happening to her face and to her body. And the result of this is that they are the only ones who actually feel like fleshed out human beings surrounded by corridors of the iPhone wielding soulless monsters. This is a problem. And here is another one. I think this film utterly fails to stand apart from the first film and only functions as a companion piece to the original Mean Girls. Now, in my reviews of Pretty Woman the Musical and Mrs. Doubtfire the Musical, you will have heard me talk about the fact that it is not effective to just take iconic lines from the film and repeat them on stage and hope that that is going to be enough. You're a musical. Use your ability to musicalize them, present them in a different way, because they are never going to be the same as they were in the film. You cannot live up to Sally Field saying the whole time. You cannot live up to Julia Roberts saying big mistake, big, huge. And that's what both of those shows try to do rather than turn those moments into songs. Mean Girls turns many of its iconic lines into sung musical moments. The October 3rd thing used to happen in a reprise of Stupid with Love, cut from the film. The Glen Coco line gets an ensemble echo going, Glen Coco, Glen Coco, Glen Coco, and various moments like that. And some of those do make it into the film. But for the others, most of the iconic lines are changed in the script to pay homage to the original. So when Gretchen first says fetch and Regina asks what's fetch, Gretchen says she heard it in an old movie. Where Regina's mom used to say, I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom, Busy Phillips instead says, I'm not a regular mom, I'm at cool mom, which is a joke on the joke from the first film. That's not funny unless viewed through the context of you expecting that first line and it's a twist on that. So anyone seeing this film for the first time is out of the joke. Also, and this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever said in front of a camera, but she says, I'm at cool mom with 6 O's, which is the most unhelpful way to tell someone your Instagram handle, because I'm like, where are the O's? There's 3 O's in that already, 2 in cool, 1 in mom. What's the distribution of the 6 O's? Is it like cool with 6? Is that what you're implying? Or is it mom with like cool mom? Like, where do the O's go? Is it 3 in one word and 3 in the other? Because there's already a 2-to-1 ratio of O's in cool to mom, so it should be arguably 4 in cool and 2 in mom. That would make the most sense. I'm absolutely overthinking this, but just foolish. And if she were to regularly tell people this was her Instagram handle, as I suspect she would, given the nature of that character, someone would have picked her up on this already and she wouldn't keep doing it. Therefore, unbelievable. You would have to have seen Mrs. Wyndham with a gun in her hand to make your story plausible. I've become too emotionally involved with this Instagram handle. I'm going to move on. My point was, they are just winking to the original film rather than standing on their own feet, which I thought was a shame. Pay homage to the original, sure, but don't rely on it with multiple callback jokes. Okie dokie, so the next problem with the film is one that has been well documented. Everyone has been talking about this, there have been articles written about this, it's become a huge topic of conversation, but I don't think anyone's yet cut to the crux of the issue specifically for Mean Girls. I'm talking about the marketing. Now, it is no secret at this point that when the trailers came out for this, they were disguising the fact that it was a musical. They managed to find exclusively spoken lines to put into the trailers, and other than that one little teaser of Reneé going, "My name is Regina George," which I've done 3 times in this video now, there was no indication that this was a movie adaptation of the Broadway musical and not just a remake of the first film, to the extent that audiences have been finding out it's a musical while watching the film. And this apparently is because musicals don't test well with preview audiences, and they didn't want to like hit audiences over the head with the fact that it's a musical. I think I have worked out why Mean Girls has more of a problem with this than any other movie musical, because The Greatest Showman didn't have this problem. The Greatest Showman was meant to be the success that made movie musicals cool again. Disney never has this problem. People expect songs in a Disney movie. In a post-Glee world, I don't think people should have trouble with seeing teenagers in high school settings bursting into song as they walk around the corridors. Hell, High School Musical is enduringly popular in a non-ironic way. People in my generation love High School Musical. And if anything, I think people would actually have been more receptive to a new Mean Girls movie if they understood that it was a musical and not just a remake. But the problem is, they would have to have called it Mean Girls the Musical. Like, that would have to be the name of the movie. Let me tell you why. So while there have been other instances, it is unusual for a movie to be turned into a musical, which is then turned into a movie musical. The other examples I can think of straight away are Hairspray and The Producers. Now, in those instances, the musicals had become so well known that they were synonymous with the title itself. You think of Hairspray, you think of the musical, perhaps more so than the original John Waters film. You think of The Producers, a lot of people would think of the musical more readily than the original Mel Brooks film. Mean Girls the musical had not eclipsed the popularity and recognition of the original Mean Girls movie. Less time had passed, people still remember that first Mean Girls movie, so in making a new Mean Girls movie musical, you kind of have to call it Mean Girls the Musical to explain what your product is, but they didn't want to do that because it sounds stupid. It sounds stupid enough on a Broadway marquee, let's be honest. It definitely sounds stupid at a movie theatre because it doesn't sound sincere, it sounds like a silly parody. In any case, as it turns out, the one thing that audiences like less than movie musicals is being tricked into seeing movie musicals that weren't clearly advertised. Not a smart idea. And I would argue if you have so little faith in audiences enjoying your product for what it realistically is, why make it in the first place? Why was this such a high priority? Finally, I want to talk about the film's message, because this is something I really enjoy from the original. It becomes an important statement about female allyship and solidarity, not even just between Cady and Regina, or Regina and Janice and the other girls at the high school, the other girls who are mentioned in the Burn book, the other girls who are name-checked at the homecoming dance, but also between the girls and their mothers, between Cady and Miss Norbury, this intergenerational recognition and support. It's an important message about feminism. That is lost completely in the remake of this film for various reasons. I told you they don't have the moment at homecoming with name-checking all of the other girls. We don't really get a sense of the other girls other than the one that Janice brings to homecoming. Yay for that, yay for lesbianism, yay for LGBTQ plus inclusion, love that. Miss Norbury still has interactions with Cady, but it doesn't feel like they cross quite as much of a bridge together. And I think that's because she is exclusively a teacher in this one. We don't have that scene where she sees her outside of the school environment. When that happens, both Cady and us as an audience see Miss Norbury as an actual human being rather than just the math teacher. And the ending of these two films, completely different. In the first one, we had this scene afterwards about them having made peace, about Regina being able to channel her rage into, like, she was like wrestling or something, but we saw all of these different scenes of the different girls being happy and beginning to mature and move on with their lives. That doesn't happen in this one. We end on the triumph that is Cady kissing Aaron Samuels at the homecoming. Having got what she wanted all along, having ostensibly learned nothing, this is meant to be the big triumph of all of it. We don't see that Regina has actually turned into a better person. She hasn't changed. She's just taken personality-altering painkillers. And then right after Cady kisses Aaron, a big crescendo of feminist empowerment if ever you needed one, we have a really fun song in the credits that I really enjoy, written by Reneé Rapp and Megan Thee Stallion, which I assume is Shakespearean, but it is based around a line that Regina has said historically to Janice as part of homophobic bullying, that Cady also says to Janice thoughtlessly, this whole like, it's not my fault that you're obsessed with me, and the whole song is this IDGAF energy, like, I'm just gonna do me, it's not my fault. I like that there's a shout out to queer women in the second verse, but it does fly completely in the face of the message of the film, which is all about like supporting each other and being kinder to each other and recognizing each other's insecurities, not talking about each other behind their back. And you may think that this doesn't matter, it's just a fun credit song, but let's look back to the 90s and the Disney credit songs that capture the message of the film with a great R&B track. I'm thinking of Mulan with the credit song True to Your Heart, You Must Be True to Your Heart, Hunchback of Notre Dame, the credit song Someday, an important powerful message. It takes the whole film and it summarizes it in a fun message with a pop beat. Titanic, My Heart Will Go On. But my bigger issue is that we don't get a resolution to the issues happening between the teenage girl characters in the film. We just get Cady kissing Aaron like it's the end of Hairspray, and I'm like, what have you learned? I don't think she's learned. I honestly don't. So those have been my issues with the film. I hope that that made sense. I hope this doesn't feel like I'm bashing it for the sake of riding this popularity train. I would love nothing more than to have really enjoyed this. Sadly, I just really didn't. But I will give you that one last piece of positivity bread because I thought of something else I really want to talk about. And this is a massive spoiler. If you haven't seen this film, skip over this. Don't watch this last bit of the video, but the cameos were cool. And I'm not just talking about Lindsay Lohan appearing at the Mathlete Championship, which was my favourite way of them including her. By the way, I thought that was a great aspect of Cady's personality to play on and then have original Cady be alongside her in that moment. And she got some great lines like, I don't know your life. Very funny, very cute. I liked that. That's a way to pay homage to the original without feeling like you are relying on it. Also shout out to Tina Fey for still playing Miss Norbury and wearing almost exactly the same polka dot shirt in the gym scene as she did in the first film. I love that that happened. And Ashley Park, who with very little screen time is hilarious as the French teacher. I love that with her having now been catapulted to more recognition in the TV show Emily in Paris that she was the French teacher. That made perfect sense. If you don't know, Ashley Park was a Broadway star before she was a TV and film star, and she played Gretchen in the original Broadway cast of Mean Girls the Musical. She is currently hospitalized, recovering from a very nasty medical emergency. Go send her love on her Instagram page. All the well wishes and support to Ashley Park. She's hilarious, she's wonderful, I'm glad she was in this film. But those have been my thoughts about Mean Girls 2024. I'm sure you will have opinions of your own. Drop them down in the comments section. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. Make sure to like this video, turn on notifications, whatever you have to do. I should really know more about this as a YouTuber. I don't know. If you like the video, go watch more videos. Speaking of which, tomorrow here on my channel, I'm going to be premiering my next video, which is a reaction to the Mean Girls soundtrack. I'm going to be listening to it for the first time since seeing the film in cinemas, and you will see my honest, candid thoughts about these versions of the songs. In the meantime, I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!